Day and welcome to the Queer Pridecast. Today, for this episode, we have Jefferson Estela. Jeff is a climate activist and is a member of the queer community. And recently, he was at COP30 to represent the Philippines and also talk about the situation happening in the Philippines and its relation to discussion on climate change. So, Jeff, could you please introduce yourself and what did you do in the recent COP30? And maybe explain a bit what is COP30 for the benefit of the people who don't even know that this type of event exists.
Yeah, hi Evan. Thanks for inviting me. Hi everyone. I'm Jefferson Estela. You can call me Jeff. I'm a queer member of the Loss and Damage Youth Coalition, of course, from the Philippines, and I'm also part of the working group of Queer Intersectionalities under the Women and Gender constituencies of the UNFCCC. So, as mentioned by Evan, I attended the COP30. COP30 is the annual UN climate conference of the United Nations, solely focused for climate. And this is the 30th edition, which happened in Belém, Brazil. And yeah, COP is a mixture of conference and side events and a lot of, discussions regarding what to do to address climate change. But the most important part of COP is the negotiations where dignitaries and officials of different countries talk about and negotiate how to fight the impacts of climate crisis. And as I have mentioned, I am part of the Loss and Damage Youth Coalition, which is the one who's supporting me to attend at least the five COPs already, which is the Glasgow, Sharm el Sheikh, Dubai, and Baku, and now Belém. And for the first time in history of COP, we have organized a working group under the Women and Gender constituency, which is the Queer Intersectionalities, wherein we wanted to push for queer visibility, not just in the climate negotiations, but in the texts itself, because
Mhm.
every COP there's a decision texts that are being released, and we wanted to make sure that it is intersectional identities are actually mentioned in the text, not just the binary that we all know already.
It's interesting because this is happening in the context of, I would say, everything that's happening in the US right now with all of the USAID fund cuts, the Trump administration trying to sort of ban research on climate and gender as well. So interesting the context that this all came in. So what do you think has changed for this year's COP? Are we more optimistic about the future COPs that will happen, or what's your sense of what's happening?
Yeah, as mentioned, in my personal opinion, because I have attended COPs for like 5 times already, which I am not proud of, because every time I shared it with people, they were like, "Oh, that's nice, that's great. You've been to these countries," but like for me, it's kind of a broken tape that it's playing the same thing again and again. But a little hope was seen for me personally in this cup, because I do think that the cup this year being held in Brazil, which has a big, queer community population. I think that's a factor for gender discussion to be more mainstream in this COP. But we saw again how conservative countries tried to really dilute and erase gender from the negotiations. And I think one clear example was this happened in different agendas, but notably Saudi Arabia, Russia, and most of them actually are, the petro states,
Mm.
states that are really depending on oil in their economy. They are the ones who are consistently push for the deletion of the word gender
Mm.
from draft texts, including in the gender action plan and other negotiations agendas. And this isn't new because most of these countries, they've repeatedly argued that gender is not relevant
Mm.
to technical decisions, or sometimes, well, most of the times they propose replacing it with vague terms like people or stakeholders. Whenever gender is proposed, you will hear same interventions like this has no mandate or this isn't universally accepted. Or sometimes, my personal favorite is when they say we prefer to only use women, not broader gender identities. And of course, this kind of interventions from countries really slow down the process of the negotiations, because if someone is not agree with this kind of text or terms, it will be of course discussed again. It will be open again for discussions, and of course the acknowledgements of vulnerability and justice get turned into ideological battles
Mm.
when these terms really actually affects frontline people, like of course Filipinos. As we all know, disasters don't hit populations or genders equally. That's why it's really important to really push for specific terms. And this is not just about the gender, but also in other terms that we use in the negotiations. Also, I also wanted to highlight PC. It's kind of frustrating because we know from the past Pope, he has this reputation to be accepting of the queer community, but the representative of the Holy See during this COP, he literally said in the closing plenary that it's
Mm.
only male and female who should be, helping for climate action, which is he was booed in the audience
Mm.
for saying that. And I think from the recent COPs and from this from the Belém COP, I do think that there has been a lot of progress in
Mm.
terms of the gender, and I recognize that despite the gender action plan being negotiated since around 2010, now it has been gavelled in COP30 for a 5-year plan for gender. We believe that the fight may take, a long and hard way to really come out of the negotiations. We believe that it's really the consistency of people fighting for it is the one that really helped push for this. And I do think that this momentum should be continued in
Mm.
Turkey and in Ethiopia.
I mean, it's not surprising that the Vatican would have this stance, despite the fact that, like the previous Pope was more, I would say, open. Basically, the like, parang they're still arguing of letting women in the clergy. So I would say it is an uphill battle to get queer people accepted by the Catholic Church. But moving past that, I would say, why do you think queer people should continue inserting ourselves in conversations like this? Like, I assume that some people playing the devil's advocate here, like, I assume that some people would say, like, why we should we go into this level of specificity when we can just, like, again, playing devil's advocate, just say na, yeah, men, women, at the end of the day, we're facing a crisis. Like, why do we need to care about identities when we should be caring about survival? Why should we resist this narrative as queer people? And why should we say that no, you have to care about queer identities as well when you discuss climate change?
Yeah, thanks. That's a very important question. No, I really do think that within the halls of the conference, such as the UN and other conferences, for me, it's important because everyone was naming connections of climate to a certain sector. So of course, even before gender was raised, we've been pushing for colonial history and like who exacerbated this, who
Mm.
colonized this. And I do think it's the same with the gender or other marginalized sectors. So I do think that if the importance of us being in the space is not just about because we are giving importance with gender, but because our fight for climate justice is really intersectional, and we can see this all throughout the COPs that it's not just gender advocates talking about gender, but we are connecting the gender with climate finance, with adaptation, with loss and damage, and even in youth movements, because we are pushing the same message
Mm.
together. And for me, personally, because for the longest time, it's also important to be in this space because the representation is also matters. For from the longest time that I've been attending COPs, I've been seeing a lot of men. Even after the analysis and reports, it's always reported that it's always 80 to 20, 80 men, 80% men, 20% women, 70% men, or 30% women. It's not always the equal. Um, and now for me, being here at COP30, I actually saw a lot of progress on this. I've seen a lot of, because also in Brazil, there's a lot of queer activists who are
Mm.
in the space, and at the same time, indigenous trans who are in the
Mm.
space. And a lot of course, non-binary identities who are also in this space. So it really matters because it's also a representation. And also, I think third, us being in the space is linking queer experience to technical agendas. As I mentioned earlier, we can link it, or we are linking it with the agendas, but we are also letting people know that we frame the LGBTQIA plus issues, um not just as a gender issue, but as a social and non-technical issue, in the space of climate. So it's really important for us to be in here. And look at us now. We've just created the first working group for LGBTQIA plus under the Women and Gender constituency, last SBs, and now we've had, like, I think, four side events, more or less. We've met with the Minister of Gender of Brazil. We've had our first press conference, and we're excited for more, because I do think, because from this COP, we've received a lot of compliments that and messages that they are happy that there's a growing visibility of people, of queer people in this space. And that means that we are not visibility is a form of pressure for the people, or people who are leading the conference, to really not just consider us, but really see that people are actually here to fight for their space.
So, with a working group now, do we see more tangible action steps? I like that you talk about visibility, which I think is very important. But do we see real progress in terms of, I mean, how do we pressure the countries to commit to next steps that you would put forward as a working group, right? Are we going to see that, or will this be basically still, I don't know, up for discussion? Obviously, it's still up for discussion, but I would want to know if ano yung pressure that's going to happen moving forward?
Yeah, that's a very important question, because there might be a gender action plan for 5 years starting next year. The actual progress or actions will happen from countries to countries. And of course, the finance. So I would like to start first with the finance, because one of the loopholes or problems with the gender action plan that come out with the
Mm.
COP30 is, there's a plan for gender, but the finance is not there.
Mm.
So the work there is to really push for countries to support the action plan, and really develop a financing mechanism to support whatever the plan is stating for countries to do. Second is, that's where countries will comes in, because for the gender action plan to happen, the NDCs and NAPs, well,
Mm.
specifically NDCs, the determined contributions and the national adaptation plans should be of course baga empowering for all gender identities and at the same time inclusive for all genders. But the problem is, even for us Filipinos or our government, the Philippines, we
Yeah.
are yet to submit the NDCs. We are delayed, and we are told that it's good na it's delayed because we are thinking through. We are making sure that our submission is okay. But I do not agree with that because even before the deadline, we have a timeline
Mm,
from UNFCCC even before on how to do it and how to
mm,
process our own NDCs. And it's just a matter of the actions of the government, which of course I do think it's not comprehensive enough to really collate from different departments and institutions and to make an NDC out of it. And the thing is, it's already the 3.0. You don't have to start from the scratch. You have your first submission, your second submission, but yeah. But then of course, since it's delayed, the
mm,
we are pushing. Well, I'm not really involved in the NDC engagement this cycle, but I think most of the NGOs what they're trying to push is the just transition, which is also
mm,
aiming to be gender empowering because of the BAM, the Belém Action Mechanism, and at the same time the JT work plan of the Philippine government. And third is how can we make sure that everyone is working on their own plans for genders, because although we have NDCs and NAPs and other climate related programs and making sure that it's really gender empowering for all identities, we also have to talk about the countries who still criminalize
mm,
being queer or being part of the queer community, because technically in our climate actions per countries, gender should be part of the
mm,
climate action plans. But of course, with the laws of other countries, it's not
mm,
possible for now. So we have to really make sure that while for me personally, we have to look on those things, especially the third one, because we have to also make sure that those countries get the same support
mm.
while we also push for our own and into the international space.
Interesting that you mentioned nga, like support from countries. While the Philippines, we do not criminalize like same-sex relations or queer people, but we also see a lack of laws to protect the queer community, right? In the context of what you're doing right now, has the Philippine government been receptive? Like, parang how have they reacted to what you've been trying to push?
Yeah, personally, I am not sure what's happening with the Senate and Congress, because obviously they have different agendas and there's a political,
Yeah.
circus going on. But I do think that we have allies
Mm,
with the new sets of public officials that we have. The new chair of the Committee on Climate Change in Congress is actually present, or
mm,
we've met with her, and I am assuming that she's making sure that she's going to continue what the previous chair happened what the previous chair has done so far. So I am keen to know what's her next steps with the next years. But as you mentioned, there's still a lack of acknowledgement in regards with how queer community is being impacted by the climate crisis, because as I do think that there's still no progress nationally with how we respond to people who are, for example, asking for help financially or physically, because for example these two people, they are both same sex, so we still recognize that that is not possible. It should be only with the opposite gender we have. And us in the climate space, we're trying our best to really advocate and change that, because with the, for example, with the loss and damage fund, that has to be removed, that traditional connotation that it's only straight couple who can access the fund, but actually the a lot of gender identities that are present in the Philippines should be accessing that fund. And I do think based on my, as far as I know, with the Klima bill, with the loss and damage fund, and with these two funds that we're trying to really mainstream here in the Philippines, we're trying to make sure that those things will be removed and be somehow a new model for how like response disaster response will be changed in our country. So I hope it will be pushed. I hope so.
Speaking of support, how about the local queer community, like the queer community in the Philippines? Like, have they been receptive as well with the discussions on climate change? Like, I know na marami tayong pinaglalaban ngayon as a queer community. Is climate part of the fight of the queer community right now? Do you think it is a priority? And if it's not, like, how can we get more people to care about this topic?
You know what? That's an interesting question. Kasi um I have a lot of queer friends in all facets of and types of NGOs or groups, but I'm not sure if I'm correct on this, but I don't think climate is a priority issue. Maybe because I'm in the climate space and I haven't heard any, but maybe sa labas ng bubble ko baka may
Mhm,
nag-uusap. But as far as I am concerned, there is none.
mhm,
I can be corrected by people who will be listening. Let me know. But I do think I don't think meron. That's why hear me on this, because I've actually talked to my friends right before I flew to Belém to
uh,
discuss this, because I've been seeing a lot of people attending the rallies and the flood control scam, and I've been seeing a lot of people and of course meeting a lot of new friends ganyan. So I kind of had an idea in my head na magkaroon ng parang convening of queer people to discuss
mhm,
this, actually, because I don't think we are actually have a conversation on this. Baka meron on person to person or like circles, but in a large gathering wala pa
mhm,
siguro. And I think that should be done, because for me concern ka talaga is huwag mangyari yung nangyari sa Yolanda, which is maraming ang queer couple na hindi nakakuha ng ayuda because they are same sex and they don't have the correct or the proper document to really
mhm.
prove that they're married, etc. But I'm grateful that some of my friends are actually talking about it, so I do think that should be the one of the focus until next year. And it's a good thing that we have allies in for example Mother Percy, who is also a queer person who's in the Congress elected, so that could also help. And of course, while I've said that, I do think that there are some interventions with progressive cities. I've heard
Mhm.
some sa Quezon City and Pasig City because I have close friends there. So yeah, we have sobrang daming kailangan pang gawin, and the work continues talaga.
As my last question, Jeff, how can people follow what's happening in this discussion? Like, I'm sure like some people who would listen to this, like queer people, would be interested now that they're aware na yun nga, na parang maybe there is a lack of discussion and they would want to contribute in some way. How could they contribute? How could they follow what you are doing? Like, how would they know what action to take? Is there like a platform, like a website? Where can they go?
Personally, I do think that yeah, number one, it's really good to listen. If you have heard this podcast or whatever we talked about in this, it's good that we are listening, that there is a lack of actions or plannings. There are things that can be done. Second, we have to join communities. Even though we are part of, queer communities such as an organizations, there are some organizations who are also queer friendly or women led or queer led that are talking about climate. So we have to, you can join those spaces or those organizations. I would prefer to queer people who are actually doing climate work. So that's me or maybe Evan, or there's a lot of friends in the space who are queer but also in the climate space. Third, if you can, you don't need naman to be part of climate orgs, because sometimes people tend to say, I don't know so much about climate whatsoever.
Mhm.
You can still join the discussions by accessing the social media pages of Climate Change Commission, DNR, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, because they're posting events where people can actually join discussions. So they're posting locations or registration forms so that we can join. So sometimes it's open and you just have to register, ganyan. Yeah, and if those three is not applicable to you, it's also okay to take up space. Maybe create an organization that specifies, your need, maybe on queer identity and maybe intersection with climate or with what you are actually working on, or maybe you want to start on. So that could also work, and then maybe try to engage or partner with much more knowledgeable organizations to have them as an resource speaker whatsoever, because people are actually doing it, organize and to really spread awareness to people. All we have to do is really take up space, because that's one of the things that actually working really well, and it's free. There's no finance that is needed there. So yeah.
Thank you, Jeff, for taking space for the Filipino queer community during COP. And I hope to see you again soon. Again, thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to this podcast, and more power.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for everything that you do also, because I've been watching tidbits of this program, and it's really good to know queer people in different sectors. So thank you so much for highlighting climate.